I just want to ask a question to you. What do you think is the foremost problem that a scientist really want if he has to work? So that is a kind of foremost requirement of a scientist. So it's a problem, right? A quality problem to work on, right? And that can come from where? It can come from nature, it can come from society, it can come from already existing knowledge, which you want to refine and make it more fruitful and useful to society and a modern life, a modern society. So in this process, when we look at it, traditional knowledge or that knowledge that comes from the ethnic communities, that plays a big role in our understanding or rather, the way the society has progressed. Many a time we don't even acknowledge, but then we all know that even science has really worked or rather benefited from what the ethnic knowledge was and been there for the age-old wisdom what we taught. And we can, the best example is the 2015 Nobel Prize for Medicine, Artemisinin for that, which Yuto received Nobel. And also she doesn't have a PhD and she doesn't have a medical degree. But then the entire body of work came from, or rather working on, or rather understanding the Chinese medicine, and it actually came from that. So we also know that, there are a lot of such examples, and some of them are really, closer to how we have something which came from, it's a good, very documented case, where the Kani tribe of Kerala, that they had a particular herb, which is anti-fatiguing effect, and Dr. Pushpangadan and others, they really found that it's can be turned into a kind of the extract can be taken and it can be used as a kind of drug, and it's been passed on to what you call Ayurveda institution and the company which is making Ayurveda for drugs, and then it's been there and there that benefit sharing has been happening. In most of the cases, the benefit sharing is not happening because we don't know, it's very difficult to know where has it generated or has been originated and then passed on and many communities might be using that. So there are a lot of issues related to that. So we as a science journalist, a practitioner of science journalism and communication, we also really want to include that kind of thing in our copies. We don't do that right now much, but then there are reasons for that. Again, as a science reporter, you also need to have the kind of rigor, you need to practice that kind of rigor. So if I'm doing a story about climate change, if I go to a villager or a community leader, I'll ask him, do you think the weather has changed? So he'll say that, yeah, 10 साल पहले इतना बारिश नहीं होता था, अभी इतना बारिश हो रहा है. So which means that's kind of, it can't be quantified, right? It's a story we can put it sometime, but then not always we can do that. So we also want that kind of quantification or the data that can go with that and all that. So really these kind of problems, so we really don't include much of that, but then we really need to do that because we also need to know many of these knowledge systems or whatever that knowledge we have come from these communities, and they have a big role to play, right? And it's going to be increasingly the case going to be there. So I'd like to ask Dr. Shettigari first about, our practice of this lining this traditional knowledge is a very important aspect, right? And so as at CSER, at the Traditional Knowledge Digital Library, has been documenting this for a long time. So can you just tell us a bit about how you have been doing this and what exactly the way of doing that, right?
I would like to take on from where Rajeshwari left. She told you about the story of basmati rice. And what's the story? It's about defending our own right on a traditional knowledge, a traditional practice of ours from misappropriation. So what's misappropriation all about? Somebody gaining IPR rights on something that they do not own, and without no legal permission from the owners of that particular knowledge or practice. And sometimes when biological resources are involved, it's also called biopiracy. That is what India faced in the mid 90s when we signed into the TRIPS agreement, moved on to a new regime. We started recognizing product patents, and we realized that haldi that we use every day in our kitchens, basmati rice, again a staple diet of northern India, especially, and in today's context across India, and even neem, for its fungicidal activity, and many more. But these are the classical cases. They were all patented in foreign countries. Patent is a legal provision. It gives you the ownership rights to that particular invention, so you can exercise monopoly to the extent you want. You may commercialize it or license it to anybody, and that is how India went to defend its own traditional knowledge from being misappropriated by others. We realize that we are a beautiful country. The diversity of the languages, the diversity of our traditions and culture makes us what we are today. In fact, if you walk out and look at the posters, it is a reflection of our format of thought, expression of thought. You look at the posters, there are pictures in it, there are paintings in it, and in today's context, I even see a QR code. We are really moving into the digital world, And if you reflect back into the past, even our traditional knowledge had been codified, but that codification is perhaps on rocks, on inscriptions, on manuscripts, and of course, some of it in books in today's context. And these are all in our own languages. So when I, as a patent examiner, sit in a patent office to examine an application, I do not realize that a part of that particular invention is traditional knowledge, perhaps from India or from any other country, because the traditional texts are not part of the literature that a patent examiner looks into. So in the context of preventing misappropriation of Indian traditional knowledge, the government of India took a stand to say that let's not go into litigation, because once a patent is granted, your only way of reverting that patent grant is litigation, and they instituted this Traditional Knowledge Digital Library, the TKDL, in the year 2001 to prevent this misappropriation of Indian traditional knowledge. We realized documentation is very, very important, and that documentation needs to be in a format that everybody understands, including the patent examiners. So I would not go into the details. I would urge all of you to look at the TKDL website to understand how it is important to have a structured, searchable format to retrieve information of our traditional knowledge, not only to prevent misappropriation, but also to appreciate our traditional knowledge in the context of utilizing that knowledge for public good. But in the context of today's conference, we are talking of the ethnic voices. So much of the ethnic voices or knowledge that we are talking today is about practices and knowledge that has not been codified yet. Okay, this knowledge, perhaps the country owns it as a country, but this knowledge, the custodians are the communities, the individuals. So there is, a certain aspect of sensitivity and respect associated with it, because the people's rights becomes important, the moral rights becomes important. So one needs to practice ethics in exercising, handling such knowledge, so that we take the prior informed consent of the communities or the individuals, ensure that that knowledge is attributed to that particular individual or the community, and the access benefit sharing that Jayan you mentioned is also inbuilt in that agreement when you are acquiring such knowledge and putting it into public domain.
Let me go to Preeti. Preeti has been extensively reporting from the rural India, so she will have experience of talking to these community leaders and people. So just tell me, how do you go about doing this? I mean, since if you want to put it into just tell us, if I want to put that into a kind of science article, or how do you think we can actually do that? I mean, can you just give us an idea?
Okay. So, thank you very much, Science Journalists Association, for inviting me, and it's really a pleasure to be here. So, I'm a journalist. I report for the People's Archive of Rural India, and as Jayan said, all our reporting is based in rural India. It's feet on the ground in rural India. So, we do come across a lot of people, like you mentioned, who have traditional knowledge. So, I want to just flip that question a little bit and ask that, everyone here has some relationship to science. We all understand, for example, that renewable energy is important, that, tigers growing our population of tigers is critical for our wildlife and our forests and so on. But the stories that we want to look at also is how does this impact the people on the ground where these projects are being set up, where NTCA is growing its number of tiger reserves. There were 15, I think 30 years ago. Today there are 53 tiger reserves, and they are inviolate spaces for tigers in which people who have lived there for centuries have been removed from their homes, right? We have decided that renewable energy is the way forward. So we are now putting up renewable energy parks, solar farms, wind farms in what is called wasteland, which is actually an ecological grassland of its own, with which has been repeatedly said by ecologists and conservationists that this is not wasteland. You cannot treat it like wasteland. So what stories we do is we look at the people who depend on that land for their lives and livelihoods, and how are their lives affected by the policies and decisions that are made with science, and I put it in single inverted commas, science backing it. For example, we have done a story last week I have done on the Ken-Betwa river linking project, which is going to take water in what is supposed to be a surplus Ken, but which is not indeed surplus at all, 218 kilometers of a cement canal across to the Betwa, which is upslope. Right? Now for this, 22 villages will be unseated, 60 square kilometers of tiger reserve will be drowned. So on one hand, you have one policy in which we say that, we should grow our tiger reserves. On the other hand, you have a policy which says that we should sink it because we want a river linking project because it's 44,000 crores. But in the middle of all this and impacting all of this is people on the ground. Who are these people? What are their knowledge systems that they have? What are they saying about all of this? And I'll take you to a story I did on insect population in India. I did this 3-4 years ago on how it's declining rapidly. And, there were the locusts. 2 years in a row, we had locusts entering from Gujarat, Rajasthan, and eating up a lot of our standing crops. Now, if you trace, so what we try and do what I should say what the attempt should be in journalism and science journalism in particular is, how do we connect the dots for a layman to understand that locust entering India, how is it related to climate change? So I'll take you to Madhya Pradesh, for example, and the gardener in the NCBS, the NCBS has a what should I say, has an arm in Pachmadi in Madhya Pradesh. And there's a gardener there, Nandulal Dhurbe, who's a Gond Adivasi. He has traditionally lived in the forest. And he said, come, I will show you what climate change means to us here. And he showed me an ant hill, which was not the regular ant hill that you see, but it was in fact little walls of mud growing in size in a concentric circle. And he said, this kind of ant hill is only found where the ground is moist. And the rising, where the wall of the anthill keeps rising, and there are multiple little walls, is where it is less dry and it goes towards the wetter part. He said, now if you come into the forests of Satpura ranges of around Pachmadi, you will not find any of these anthills now, because climate change has impacted even the way ants live on the ground. In the Nilgiris, for example, there is this lady in her 70s who said, when I was a young girl, I used to see many fireflies at night. And she says, today I don't see them anymore. The Nilgiris also, which is a huge ecosystem in the Western Ghats, is also experiencing climate change, and people who live there are telling us how they are seeing the climate change. Now, I think that all of us will agree that, a good story begins with lived experiences. And so if we can get those lived experiences of people who actually live that life and bring it into our stories in science, on conservation, biodiversity, on climate change, I think our stories will be that much richer.
Absolutely, yeah? Absolutely, exactly. Thank you, Preeti. And actually comes from Arunachal Pradesh, right? So she has been living very close to a national park, and she has been working with the people, Dibang Valley also. So she would be able to tell us a bit about, what do people think about, living in a that kind of area, and also about a bit about their, cultural practices and how they interact with, these kind of policy and regulation, legislative issues and all that. Can you just tell us about that?
Good afternoon, सबको. And thank you SAI team for bringing me here. तो I'll be speaking more in Hindi. तो शुभ्रा आप translate करेंगे क्योंकि मुझे ये पता चला कि lots of people they doesn't understand Hindi here. और मेरा हिंदी तो मैं अरुणाचली हिंदी से बात करूंगी तो इवन जो हिंदी स्पीकिंग वाले लोग हैं ना उन लोग को भी थोड़ा सा ज़्यादा कंफ्यूजन होगा. तो मुझे नहीं पता कि मैं जो स्टोरी यहाँ पे शेयर करूँगी वो साइंस के साथ में कितने रिलेट करेंगे, बट आई विल बी मोर शेयरिंग माई स्टोरीज. द स्टोरी ऑफ इदू मिश्मी विच इज़ लिविंग इन अरुणाचल प्रदेश इन दिबांग वैली. तो मैं ऐसे जगह से बिलोंग करती हूँ जहाँ पे जिसके जो कल्चर है बहुत ही ज़्यादा रिच है, बायोडाइवर्सिटी बहुत ज़्यादा रिच है. अब तक हम जो है ऐसे हमारे लिए जो नेचर और कल्चर ये कोई बहुत ज़्यादा सेपरेट उस नज़रिए से हम लोग नहीं देखते हैं, क्योंकि हम मतलब मेरा गांव मेरी खुद की जो गांव है वो जंगल के बीच में है. और कभी ये नहीं सोचा कि मतलब इसको कंजर्व करने टाइगर को कंजर्व करने के लिए टाइगर रिजर्व शुड बी देयर, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. हम गांव के आसपास में ही कितने सारे जानवर नेकेड आई वी कांट सी बिकॉज फॉरेस्ट बहुत बड़ा होता है हमारे यहाँ पे. मेरे गांव एक जंगल के बीच में और घर जो है सिर्फ हाउस होल्ड इज इट्स ओनली 3 हाउस होल्ड. और इसके बाद में खेती होते हैं. और जब मैं छोटी थी तो खेतों में जाती थी तो मकई की खेती होते थे, तो वहाँ पे हम लोग हर दिन मतलब खेती में वो मकई जो है जानवर रेडिंग ना करे, क्रॉप रेडिंग ना करे, इसलिए हम लोग रात को लेट नाइट वहाँ पे जागते रहते थे और उन लोग रेडिंग करते थे. तब से लेकर आज तक ऐसा एनिमल का जो पॉपुलेशन है वो बहुत ज़्यादा रेड्यूस हो गया, वैसा कुछ नहीं है. इंक्लूडिंग टाइगर, मिश्मी ताकिन, हिमालयन ब्लैक बियर, सो एंड सो मेनी स्पीशीज आर देयर जो कि हम लोग के साथ में शेयर करते हैं जंगल को. तो हम लोग ये बोल लीजिए कि मतलब कोएग्जिस्ट करते हैं इसके साथ में. और दिबांग वैली का अगर पूरा एरिया को हम अगर देखेंगे तो इट्स approximately 9,173 something square kilometer. अब तक बहुत कुछ सही से मतलब सब कुछ इंटैक्ट है. और हमारा जो ईदू पॉपुलेशन है वो है हार्डली इट्स 13 to 14,000. तो जंगल इतना बड़ा, लेकिन इसके ऊपर में ना क्या हुआ है कि धीरे धीरे लोगों को ये लगने लग गया कि इसमें बहुत ज़्यादा ऐसे एनिमल्स है, स्पीशीज मिल रहे हैं, तो क्यों ना इसको रिजर्व्स में कन्वर्ट कर दे. तो ये उससे पहले इन 1992 क्या हुआ है कि वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरी डिक्लेयर हुआ है विदाउट टेकिंग एनी कंसेंट फ्रॉम द पब्लिक. हम लोगों तब में मैं तो शायद बची थी, तो मेरे जो पापा थे उन लोगों को भी कुछ नहीं पता. आई एम द फर्स्ट जनरेशन जो कि एजुकेशन लिया. आज मैं आप लोगों के सामने बैठ के बात कर रही हूँ. तो सोचिए मेरे जो पापा है, मेरे जो ग्रैंड पेरेंट्स है, दे डोंट नो एनीथिंग अबाउट व्हाट इज वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरी, व्हाट विल बी द टाइगर रिजर्व, व्हाट विल बी द डेम्स एंड ऑल. तो ये सारा जो 4,173 समथिंग स्क्वायर किलोमीटर हैज़ बीन डिक्लेयर्ड एज अ वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरी, वो तो 1992 में हो चुका है. और धीरे धीरे अब चल करके आता है ये सिलसिला चलता है 2000 से लेकर के अभी तक चल रहा है. तो आई मीन हमारे यहाँ पे नदी बहुत सारा है, बहुत ज़्यादा रिवर स्ट्रीम्स है, बड़े बड़े रिवर स्ट्रीम्स है. तो दे थिंक कि ओके मतलब वहाँ पे डैम्स बननी चाहिए, बड़े बड़े बांध बनने चाहिए. तो डैम्स कोई छोटा मोटा डैम्स नहीं बन रहा है. एक है 2,883 मेगावाट का है जिसका कमीशन हो चुका है, 2,880 मेगावाट है. एंड अनदर वन इज 3,097 मेगावाट. and then 500 megawatt, 420 megawatt, 400 megawatt, and 680 megawatt in the Dibang Valley only. तो मैं यहाँ कंसेंट पे ज़्यादा फोकस कर रही हूँ, क्योंकि कम्युनिटी इटसेल्फ सब कुछ वहाँ पे कंजर्व कर रहे हैं. जैसे मैंने अपने स्टोरी पे बताया कि सब कुछ हम लोग सब कुछ देखते हुए आए हैं और अभी भी सब कुछ इंटैक्ट है. लेकिन आउटसाइडर्स को ये लगता है कि ये सारा चीज़ें जो है ना इस तरीके से ही प्रोटेक्ट होगा. अभी रिसेंटली क्या हुआ है कि इनसाइड द प्रोटेक्टेड एरिया government of India and government of Arunachal, they are trying to declare the tiger reserve, जो कि वो फिर उसके थोड़े से नीचे में ही जितना भी अभी मैंने डैम्स के जो नंबर गिनवाए हैं ना, वो फुट हिल्स में सारा वहाँ पे इतना सारा डैम्स वो लोग प्रपोज कर रहे हैं. तो इतना कॉन्ट्रडिक्टरी, मतलब एक दिबांग वैली में इदू मिश्मी कम्युनिटी बेल्ट में उसी जगह पे कंजर्वेशन भी करना है एंड देन डेवलपमेंटल एक्टिविटीज़ भी, दोनों ही चीज़ें करना है. लेकिन वहाँ के जो पब्लिक है उसको इंक्लूजन ही नहीं किया गया, उसका ओपिनियन को कुछ मायने ही नहीं दिया गया. लोगों को ये इस तरीके के बात बोल कर कि ओके यू विल बी बेनिफिटेड ह्यूज अमाउंट, इस तरीके का कन्विंसिंग, मतलब किस तरीके से लोगों को मैं ये कहूँगी कि दिस इज़ अ काइंड ऑफ ब्रेन वॉशिंग एंड ऑल, कि बहुत ज़्यादा पैसा मिलेगा, इसी से ही आपका डेवलपमेंट होगा, इसी से आपके यहाँ में सड़कें आएंगे, स्कूल्स आएंगे, हॉस्पिटल्स आएंगे. तो ये एक नरेशन ना, तो इस तरीके के जो नरेशन लोगों को दे करके जो कन्विंस कर रहे हैं, तो इज दिस फेयर और अनफेयर, ये शायद यहाँ पे बहुत बड़े बड़े लोग बैठे हुए हैं, आप लोगों को समझना होगा. और जहाँ तक जो साइंटिफिक फाइंडिंग से मैं बात करूँगी, तो इटालियन जो 3097 मेगावाट्स की अगर बात करेंगे तो उस पर इन्वायरमेंटल इम्पैक्ट असेसमेंट एक स्टडी हुआ था, जो कि दैट स्टडी वाज बीन कैरिड बाय वाइल्ड लाइफ इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ इंडिया देहरादून के. तो उन लोग ने वहाँ पे स्टडी किया था, तो उन लोग की स्टडी पे भी काफ़ी फ्लॉज आया, क्योंकि एक तो वो कल्चरल पर्सपेक्टिव बिल्कुल दिया ही नहीं उन लोगों ने, उसको तो एकदम अनदेखा ही कर दिया. दूसरा, जितने भी जो स्पीशीज़ थे, हम लोगों को भी पता है कि वहाँ पे क्या क्या स्पीशीज़ है, तो वो कॉपी पेस्टिंग वाला काम उन लोगों ने किया. तो ये जो इसको बेस करके मैं अगर बोलूँगी ना, तो रिसर्चर हो, जर्नलिस्ट हो, कोई भी हो, किसी भी कम्युनिटी ऐसे जो मार्जिनलाइज जो कम्युनिटी है ना, उस जगह पे जा करके अगर आप स्टडी भी करेंगे, उस पर पेपर भी लिखेंगे, तो बहुत सोच समझ करके इंसानियत के तौर पे जा करके पहले समझिए, देखिए, लिखिए, क्योंकि आप लोगों के लिखने से, आप लोगों के पेपर के पब्लिकेशन से बहुत ज़्यादा इम्पैक्ट्स पड़ते हैं. हम जैसे जो लोग कम्युनिटी में रहते हैं ना, हम लोग जो ग्रास रूट लेवल पे जो रहते हैं ना, हम पे इम्पैक्ट्स पड़ता है, क्योंकि हम लोग एक तो उसका जो इम्पैक्ट है वो भी हम ही झेलेंगे एंड देन ब्लेम भी हमारे ही ऊपर आएंगे, क्योंकि ये बोलेंगे कि आप लोगों को तो इतना ज़्यादा कंपनसेट किया गया है, जो कि कंपनसेशन भी फेयर अमाउंट में नहीं होता है. तो अभी तक बहुत ज़्यादा वी हैव सो मेनी एग्जाम्पल्स इन हैंड, तो हम लोग मतलब हमसे भी लिया जाता है, देन ब्लेम भी हमारे ऊपर में किया जाता है. तो आई डोंट नो, मतलब इस चीज़ को किस तरीके से इसमें इंक्लूड करेंगे, ये आप लोग को सोचना होगा.
Thank you, Achal. This is a very important thing because, basically when we are far away from the, like the center, the government, I'm not just saying one government, anyway, the regimes can do anything anyway. So, because anyway, the media is also not covering Northeast very well. So, many things we don't know because it's not a priority thing for us. So, that's a thing, yeah. Dr. Sharigari, I want to ask you, like this documenting this information and knowledge is a very important thing. So when you do that, I just want to know, how do you do that? Is that this kind of ethical code you follow, or access and benefit sharing and the prior consent from community leaders or community? How do you go about this? Just want to get an idea about, how does that happen?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the TKDL being a national initiative, we exercise a lot of caution in whatever work we do because, we directly relate to public trust and as well as national ownership of that particular knowledge. So far in the TKDL, we have only focused on codified knowledge. So we have picked up texts from the Indian systems of medicine. We have covered Ayurveda, Siddha, Unani, so from the northern Himalayan regions of our country, and also yoga practices. So this is already codified form of knowledge. It is already there in public domain, so anybody can access that and exercise it. As long as they don't come back in filing a patent, we don't object to any of it. Okay, so that's one aspect of it. But considering that this initiative has worked wonders so far, especially in the context of the objective preventing misappropriation of Indian traditional knowledge, the National IPR Policy of 2016 has recommended that the TKDL also include oral traditional knowledge, but with a catch. They said, please ensure that the lives of the communities are not compromised. Okay, so that again instills a greater responsibility on the TKDL to ensure that we do not take away the community knowledge and put it in public domain. So what we have done so far is we have worked with a lot of people across the country. We have interacted with people, understood the practices, and we are bringing out a guidance document that talks of the three important aspects that I mentioned: prior informed consent of the communities or the knowledge holders. So here it is to talk about what is it that you're going to do with that particular knowledge. Are you going to put it in public domain? So people who are researchers here would be aware there's a lot of ethno-botanical work, ethno-medicinal work that is done, and we as researchers with great passion go about and publish that as a research article. So we're putting all this information in public domain with no attribution of that knowledge to the knowledge holders, or even perhaps ignorant of the fact that this is already becoming prior art information in the context of patenting. So what we are mentioning in the guidance document is to ensure that you understand your responsibilities, you also understand what are the objectives of the knowledge holders. That is the first aspect. The second one is, attribution of the knowledge. Say you have taken the consent, and based on the express consent of the knowledge holders, you go about publishing that particular article. So you can include them as the authors of that particular knowledge to the extent that they have contributed, or at least acknowledge them in that particular research article. The second one is when you innovate further after taking that particular knowledge, perhaps you have a potential to file a IPR. So you can make them co-inventors in that particular patent application or any IPR application. The third and most important one is partnership. Say you're making a commercial product and selling it in the market, make a partnership with the knowledge holders. So what she mentioned, we are not reaping the benefits, that can be brought to fruition. So these are the three important aspects. And as a research institution, who in the CSIR we are planning to make it mandatory, we will have an institutional mechanism where it would become part of a code of ethics, to be followed by all the researchers. Okay. So this is what we are planning to do. But I'd also like to mention that when we are talking of traditional knowledge, it is not a static knowledge. It is a dynamic knowledge because it has to align to the needs of the time, the ecology and the environment around. So when in the patent law, we do have a section 3P that says that disallows any patent from being filed on anything that is traditional knowledge. But this should not act as a deterrent for somebody for scientists to pick traditional knowledge and further innovate on that. So what we are also trying to say is that as long as you meet the requirements of a patentability of an intervention, that is novelty and inventive step. Here inventive step becomes very important. People can go about and take the knowledge holders as partners and further innovate on the traditional practices so that it meets the requirements of the current times as well as the future.
I just want to ask a supplementary question. In the sense, like you said, scientists are now actually making this. Is it a practice? Is it happening? No.
in the publication? Are they using the community?
Some of them are
Okay.
doing it.
Can you
Say,
give
for
a-
example, some
Yeah.
CSIR labs are also
Okay.
kind of acknowledging that. They are also mentioning in the methodology, saying that, you know, these are the communities from whom they have gained the knowledge, and, you know,
Okay.
where from they have gained that knowledge. And then two other institutional frameworks that are in place is the Transdisciplinary University in
Yeah,
Bangalore,
Bangalore, TDU.
and the Honeybee Network from Ahmedabad,
Ahmedabad.
Gandhinagar, who have institutionalized mechanism, including the National Innovation Foundation, of course, under the DST. So they have mechanisms where at least prior informed consent is a main important criteria. But if you look at the other governmental framework of the Biological Diversity Act,
Yeah.
okay, BDA,
Yeah.
it clearly mentions about access
Yes,
benefit
yes,
sharing, but this is limited to genetic resources and biological resources and not the
Okay.
others. Yes.
Preeti did say something very interesting. Like each tiger we protect actually displaces 150 people, forest dwellers. I thought it's a very fascinating. Fascinating is like it's a rather way around. It's a very a number is a concerning number. Yeah. So that's a kind of thing I think you talked about when talking. And tell me this, when you want to, this is a question I asked earlier, so I just want to ask again, because as a science journalism practitioner, if I want to go to a kind of community leader and talk to them, how do I get that thing which I can actually use in my article or something? Do you think
I
it's
think
a
I'll
one way
answer
one can
the
put those in?
first question, the second question first. So, I must say, my last many years of reporting, I owe a lot to all the scientists that I have spoken to. I sometimes read up to 20 scientific papers before I even go into the field. While scientific papers are, easier to read, scientists are very willing to share their information. You call them up and you have an appointment, you can meet them and they'll share. Unlike when you go into the field, it's not like that. People are not just going to jump and give you answers, not talk to you. So speaking to people on the ground who are living those lives, for whom this is their life, this is not just some work, that this is their everyday. One needs to have conversations, one needs to make them understand what you are doing, why you are doing this. It cannot be as extractive, if I were to use that word, as one could be with, say, a scientist. So I really hear actually when she was talking about Dimang Valley, the kind of displacement that will occur, the kind of lack of Gram Sabha meetings, which is mandated by the Forest Rights Act and which is not followed in letter or spirit across India when forest dwellers are being evicted from their land. It is mostly not seen, and if it is seen, it is actually all fake, which we are seeing again and again in the last many years of reporting on displacement from forests. So when we talk about coming back to the 150 humans who are displaced for every tiger, actually the number is going to increase much more, because in the next 3 years, many more sanctuaries will be made tiger reserves. And the tiger reserve, the minute that word comes, tiger reserve, as many of you must be knowing, it means it is an inviolate space. Now, this idea of inviolate space, many scientists like you have argued, is a colonial concept about conservation, which does not apply to a country like India, where we have had indigenous people living, coexisting with, in forests, right? So, coming back to that 150 or 200 or 500 or whatever it becomes, who are these people? They are not you and me. They are people for whom the forest is their livelihood, it is their life, it is their culture, it is their way of living, and we are displacing them. And what are we reducing them to? We are reducing them to probably being construction labor migrants in a city, or the driver or somebody in our cities, because they have no other skill set which they can use. So when we talk about, so I just want to mention that when we talk in science journalism, or we talk in journalism, I would say, I don't want to distinguish just science journalism. We very often don't take the voices of the people who this kind of policies are impacting. And also, I think policies are very often ignored. For example, why have cheetahs come to India? I'm sure many of you have been following it. I have written extensively on Kuno and the cheetahs, and I've spoken to many scientists. And the Supreme Court in 2013 said that we cannot bring African cheetahs in. In 2000, lions were supposed to go to Kuno. They were not sent, despite the fact that there is only one population of Asiatic lions and they live all in Gir. They were supposed to go to Kuno in 2000, for which Kuno was cleared out of forest dwellers. In 2013, when the Supreme Court was had a writ petition saying, why have the lions not come? They must come in 6 months, and no, cheetahs cannot come to India because they are African cheetahs, not Asiatic cheetahs. All this has been completely ignored, not listened to at all. And today we have cheetahs in India from Africa brought at great cost to our national exchequer, not in the wildlife action plan, which again, I must say as a science journalist, we must use government data to at least point out the flaws that government is doing. So if the wildlife action plan of 2017 to 2031 says clearly that cheetahs are not endangered for us or not our priority in wildlife planning, then how is it that we are bringing cheetahs in at this great cost? Of course, they're all dying by the dozen in Kuno right now. So, I mean, I think these are some of the things that we need to ask. And also, why are we, while talking about conservation and so on, we must not forget the people for whom this is all, whose lives will be impacted by these decisions, by putting up renewable energy. And it's interesting that the very people who are being displaced by renewable energy, whose livelihoods are ending because there's a solar farm now in what used to be a sacred grove or a common, are also asking, why is it that renewable energy, and they are asking, nobody else is, that the Great Indian Bustard, which was at one time was going to be India's, bird, right? Not the peacock. But because of its name, I believe, this is a joke, sorry, that it was not taken. So the Great Indian Bustard, now there are 120 of them left in the wild. Their range has narrowed to just 100 kilometers in Pokhran in Rajasthan. And that is exactly where the renewable energy grids are coming up. And the Great Indian Bustard flies to a height of 35 meters. It's a very, very large bird. It looks straight forward. It hits 35-meter high microgrid wires and it hits it, and after that it dies slowly, right? And people are erecting statues of the Great Indian Bustard, people who live there, as a symbol of protest. So you see, if you connect the dots, there is not really that much of which is separate. It's not science which is separate. It's not people's lives which are separate. There are people on the ground also fighting for this.
Actually, you've been, working in Dibang Mali. So can you just tell me a bit about the work you've been doing there about, yeah.
तो हम दिबांग टीम है, एक लोकली लेड टीम है, तो उसके साथ में भी हम काम करते हैं. तो दिबांग टीम इज़ बेसिकली वर्किंग ऑन नेचर एंड कल्चर रिलेशन. तो ये दिबांग जब ये ऑल्सो हम ही लोग ने ही ये जो टीम को बनाया था, तो ये बना था 2000 ऐसे में. तो इससे पहले I was working as a field assistant, and then उसके दौरान काफ़ी चीज़ें पता चला कि कल्चरल वैल्यूज़ एज वेल एज जो जितना भी डिस्ट्रक्टिव चीज़ें जो ऑन द वे है, वो हमारे पे क्या इम्पैक्ट्स पड़ने वाला है. जितना भी जो कल्चरल प्रैक्टिसेस, जो ट्रेडिशनल नॉलेज जो अब तक सही थे, सो इन फ्यूचर हाउ इट विल बी इम्पैक्टेड बाय so many ongoing projects and all. तो इसके बाद में तो हम लोगों को लगा कि we have to do something, तो क्योंकि सब कोई इन सब चीज़ों को एड्रेस नहीं करते हैं. सब कोई तो if bureaucrats are there, departments are there, so they are doing their work, they are, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है कि किसी को बहुत ज़्यादा कंसर्न दिखाई देता है, वैसा कुछ नहीं है. तो हम ही लोग को ही कुछ करना होगा. देन वी मेड अ टीम, एंड देन इसका बाद में हम लोग ने ये काम करना शुरू किया कि किस तरीके से लोगों को एड्रेस करें कि जो भी चीज़ें, क्योंकि एक डायरेक्ट वे में अगर हम बोलेंगे ना कि डैम इज़ नॉट गुड, टाइगर रिजर्व तो जस्ट नेम से के लिए बना रहा है, क्योंकि टाइगर वॉज एग्जिस्ट एंड इट इज स्टिल एग्जिस्टिंग, वो थे. और कल्चरली भी हम लोग उसको भाई, हमारा ह्यूमन के भाई ही मानते हैं. तो इन सब के नरेटिव्स के रहते हुए अब तक सब कुछ ठीक है ना, तो लेकिन उसमें इतना बड़ा सारा चीज़ें जो है ना, जो कि बहुत ही इंटर कनेक्ट करता है, जैसे बिग प्रोजेक्ट्स लाइक डैम्स, माइनिंग्स, टाइगर रिजर्व, वैली पे डैम्स का 17 तो डैम्स प्रपोज करेंगे, उसके थोड़े इधर में माइनिंग प्रपोज करेंगे, एंड देन अब हायर एलिवेशन पे टाइगर रिजर्व्स एंड नेशनल पार्क, तो समझ में आता है। बट इसको लोगों तक कैसे पहुंचाए, क्योंकि लोगों को पहले ही ये बताया गया है कि नो यू विल बी गेटिंग ह्यूज मनी इस तरीके से, एंड देन एंड में वैसा कुछ होने वाला नहीं है। तो फिर ये एक कंसर्न था, और दूसरा ये भी कि जो हमारे फोक टेल्स होते हैं ना, फोक टेल्स में इतने सारे नॉलेज है, जितने आप लोगों के पास है ना, उससे उसके बराबर या तो उससे थोड़ा सा ज़्यादा भी बोल लो, क्योंकि दे वर आवर एंसेस्टर वाज द वन ऑफ द कीन ऑब्जर्वर। उन लोग अपने आसपास को इतने बारीकी से उन लोग ऑब्जर्व करते थे कि हर चीज़ के पेटेंट क्यों है उस पर कहानी बना दिया, लैंडस्केप है तो उसकी भी कहानी, एंड देन जंगल में कम शोर शराबा करना है, ज़्यादा करना है, कौन सा चीज़ को कौन सा मंथ में यूज़ करना है, कौन सा सीजन में यूज़ करना है। तो हमारी जो ईदो है ना, उसमें कोई पहले कैलेंडर नहीं हुआ करते थे। हम लोग जो है बर्ड्स के जो कॉल है यानी फ्लावरिंग सीजन है, इसके बाद में बेम्बू शूट होते हैं ना, उसको जो निकलने का जो टाइम होता है, उन सब को फॉलो करके हार्वेस्टिंग का एंड सीड सोविंग, कल्टीवेशन, उन सब उसी तरीके से ही फॉलो किया करते हैं। अभी भी वैसे ही होता है। तो इन सब चीज़ें, ये सब चीज़ें जो है ना, कि अभी फिर आज के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में अगर देखेंगे तो सम थिंग्स आर डिसअपियरिंग बिकॉज ऑफ दिस मॉडर्न लाइफ एंड ऑल, क्योंकि हम लोगों ने बोला कि हम लोग कॉलोनियल प्रैक्टिसेस जो भी है उस चीज़ को वी आर ग्रेटेस्ट कॉपी केट। तो ऐसे में सब कुछ मतलब ऑलमोस्ट डिसअपियर ना। तो इन सब चीज़ों को, जबकि ये हमारे जो फोक टेल्स है, इसमें पूरी की पूरी नॉलेज है, जो कि कंजर्वेशन, इकोलॉजिकल कंजर्वेशन का बोलो या फिर कल्चरल कंजर्वेशन, जिस वे में भी देखो, ये बहुत अपने आप में बहुत ही ज़्यादा मीनिंगफुल है। और आज के डेट में भी हम लोग इस चीज़ को बहुत मायने देते हैं। तो इसको कैसे कंटिन्यू प्रोसेस पे रखें, तो ये एक था फोक टेल्स। तो हम लोगों ने क्या किया कि फोक टेल्स पे भी काम करना शुरू किया है, एंड देन एट द सेम टाइम ईदू लैंग्वेज भी बहुत ज़्यादा, बहुत बच्चे को, जो छोटे बच्चे हैं उसको बोर्डिंग स्कूल में भेज देते हैं फॉर द बेटर एजुकेशन एंड ऑल, कॉलेज चले जाते हैं, फिर बाहर में ही मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम वो लोग स्पेंड करते हैं, तो घर वापस आना थोड़ा उसके लिए मुश्किल हो जाता है। तो ये जर्नी में उसका जो है ना, बहुत सारा नॉलेज, लैंग्वेज, सब कुछ ख़त्म हो गया होता है। तो हम लोगों ने एक ये कोशिश किया कि चलो लैंग्वेज का थ्रू स्टोरी टेलिंग वी आर ट्राइंग टू कि प्रिजर्विंग द लैंग्वेज एट द सेम टाइम, क्योंकि हम लोग जो है ना, जो स्टोरी है फोक टेल्स को कलेक्ट करते हैं, इसके बाद में फिर स्कूल्स के बच्चों को हम लोग अपना ओन लैंग्वेज में, ईदू लैंग्वेज में, एंड देन इंग्लिश, हिंदी, ऐसा ना। तो इसको हम लोगों ने क्या किया, आउटडोर सेशन, जब क्लासरूम में बच्चे थोड़ा बोर हो जाते हैं और उतना सीखते भी नहीं, तो हम लोगों ने कोशिश किया कि बच्चे जो है ना, ऑल सेंसेस यूज़ करें बेस्ड ऑन स्टोरीज। तो मैं थोड़ा सा एक स्टोरी को मैं बोलना चाहूँगी, जैसे कि डियर का एक स्टोरी है। तो डियर जो है ना, जंगल में कुछ भी पत्ता खाता है ना, लॉट्स ऑफ पत्ता आर देयर, तो एक पत्ता खाकर बोलता है कि वो हड़क करके वो बार्क करता है, तो वो ये बोलता है कि ये पत्ता तो बहुत अच्छा है। फिर अगला पत्ता के सामने ये बोलता है कि ये तो कुछ भी नहीं था, ये ही बहुत अच्छा है। फिर यहाँ पे भी बार्क करता है। तो इसमें ना मल्टीपल स्पीशीज ऑफ जो लीव्स है यहाँ पे भी मिल जाते हैं, और हमारे ईदू में भी उसका कई अलग अलग नाम है। तो वो इन सब नामों को हम लोग क्या करते हैं कि बच्चों को साथ में ले जाकर कि वी लेट देम टू टच दैट लीव्स, एंड तो इसका बाद में अपने लैंग्वेज में भी नाम बताते हैं, एज वेल एज इंग्लिश में भी नाम बताते हैं, और उसके साथ में स्टोरी भी, वो जो फोक टेल्स है वो भी यहाँ पे साथ में सीख रहा है। तो इस तरीके का एक प्रोग्राम हम लोग कर रहे हैं वहाँ पे। एंड देन शैमनिक प्रोग्राम भी हम लोग फिर उस पर भी काम कर रहे हैं विद द हेल्प ऑफ CBOs, कम्युनिटी बेस्ड ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के कोलैबोरेशन में हम लोग ये काम कर रहे हैं कि अभी जो जितना भी जो हमारे जो ईदू मिश्मी की जो कल्चर में है ना, वो शेमन जो है ना बहुत बड़ा रोल प्ले करता है। सब कुछ ऑलमोस्ट ये मान के करके चलिए कि वही डिटरमाइन करता है, क्योंकि मैं यहाँ पे बहुत लोगों को मैं शेयर कर रही थी कि हमारे कल्चर में क्या होता है कि हम लोग अभी भी वाइल्ड एनिमल्स हम लोग वी कंज्यूम, हाँ, तो लेकिन इट हैज आफ्टर कंज्यूमिंग वाइल्ड एनिमल्स वी फॉलो चेन्स ऑफ रिस्ट्रिक्शंस विच वी कॉल टेबूज। जैसे आज हमने फीमेल्स नहीं खाती है, मेल लोग कंज्यूम करते हैं कभी कभी, तो फॉर एग्जांपल अगर डियर मीट उसने खाया है ना, तो ही हैज़ टू फॉलो चेन्स ऑफ रेस्ट्रिक्शन, लाइक फॉर वन नाइट he cannot share bed with his wife, he cannot go to any kind of social gathering, be it funeral, rituals, birth ceremony, nothing, शादी में कहीं पे भी नहीं जा सकते। और इसके बाद में फिर एंड फॉर द होल लूनर हम लोग कपड़ा नहीं धो सकते हैं आफ्टर कंज्यूमिंग वाइल्ड एनिमल्स। एंड देन जिसने हंटिंग किया ना, उसने 5 days पूरा फिर रिस्ट्रिक्शन को फॉलो करना है फॉर 5 days। तो ये हम लोग इसलिए करते हैं कि वी बिलीव इन स्पिरिचुअल, वी आर एनिमल्स। तो हम लोग ये मानते हैं कि जो भी चीज़ें हम डोमेस्टिकेट नहीं करते हैं, दोस आर बिलोंग फ्रॉम समवन एल्सेस who are living in the big mountains and rivers, तो they are the owner। तो ये उसको रेस्पेक्ट करने के लिए उसको गिविंग बैक है ये काइंड ऑफ। तो ये सारी चीज़ें सॉरी मैं क्वेश्चन ज़्यादा ही भटक गई।
Carry on. We are all engrossed anyway.
It is lovely to hear.
तो हम लोग ये सारे प्रोग्राम, तो ये सब चीज़ को कौन बताता है? जैसे कि किसी ने मुझसे ये पूछा था कि अच्छा अरुणाचल में सुसाइड बहुत होता है, ये सब है, तो हमारे ईदू मिश्मी में इन सब चीज़ों को भी ये जो वाइल्ड लाइफ को जो कंज्यूम करते हैं उसके साथ कनेक्ट किया जाता है, और इसको बताता है शेमन। जैसे मेरे घर में अगर अननेचुरल डेथ्स होता है एंड देन वहाँ पे रिचुअल्स होते हैं, हम लोग 3 या 4 days का हम लोग शेमनिक रिचुअल्स रखते हैं। तो उसमें वो शेमन जो है आ करके वो जो थ्रू चैंटिंग वो ये बोल देता है कि इस परिवार में पहले किसी ने रेस्ट्रिक्शंस को फॉलो करने में भूल हुआ है या फिर किसी से कुछ हुआ है इस तरीके से। तो उस समय में ये पता चल जाता है कि एक्चुअल में भी हमारा फैमिली जो है कुछ कर चुके होते हैं, वो किसी को नहीं बताए होते। तो ऐसा, और इसके बाद में शेमन मतलब इन सब के अलावा भी बहुत सारा ऐसे चीज़ें हैं जो आज भी मैं बहुत ज़्यादा मतलब और क्या बोलूँ इसको सुपरफिशियल शायद मुझे ये माना जाएगा इस फोरम में, पर मैं हूँ अभी भी मैं शेमनिक रिचुअल्स में मैं बिल्कुल अभी भी फॉलो करती हूँ। अभी भी मेरे गले में ये इसको एरोमेटिक कुरकुमक बोलते, शायद इसका साइंटिफिक नाम ये है। हम लोग ईदू में इसको कालीता बोलते हैं। तो जब भी हम लोग कहीं पे भी जाते हैं किसी नई जगह पे, या फिर बीमार ये सब होता है, या अच्छा सपना नहीं देख रहा होगा, घर में कुछ अच्छी चीज़ें नहीं हो रहा होगा, तो ये सारी चीज़ें हम शेमन मतलब रिचुअल कराते हैं, इसको कालीऊ बोलते हैं। तो ये सारी चीज़ें मैं इसलिए बोल रही हूँ जैसे कि ट्रेडिशनल नॉलेज के बात हम लोग कर रहे हैं, और एंसेस्ट्रल जितना भी जो साइंस ये सब आने से पहले ह्यूमन एवोल्यूशन शुरू हुआ था। तो ह्यूमंस को आई थिंक दे हैव बेटर नॉलेज ना, कि मतलब किस तरीके से इस धरती पे खुद को एग्जिस्ट करना है, अडॉप्ट करना है। मैं यहाँ पे बैठ करके सुन रहे थे बहुत सारा, तो किसी का ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का 7 साल 8 साल 11 साल ऐसा ना, तो ह्यूमन तो हम लोग तो अभी है, पर हमारा जो एंसेस्टर है वो तो हज़ारों साल पुराना है। तो हम में से कुछ जो है ना उन सब चीज़ों को अभी भी मानते आ रहे हैं। तो हम तो एज अ टीम हम लोग वहाँ पे इस पे भी काम कर रहे हैं। एंड हम साइंस पे आएंगे, रिसर्च भी हम लोग कर रहे हैं, क्योंकि हम लोगों को लगता है ना, क्योंकि ये साइंस एंड जो कम्युनिटी का जो नॉलेज है, ट्रेडिशनल नॉलेज है, ये पैरेलली जाना बहुत ज़रूरी है। ट्रेडिशनल नॉलेज ये सब, क्योंकि शुरू से अगर इस तरीके से देखा गया होता तो इतना डिस्ट्रक्टिव चीज़ें शायद डिस्ट्रैक्शंस अभी तक शायद नहीं हुआ होता। हमने ये सब चीज़ों को इतना सेपरेट करके रख दिया कि, और और हम इतने एडमेंट हो चुके हैं कि मतलब इंटरडिसिप्लिनरी बोल करके आजकल एक नया वर्ड्स आ गया, उस पर काम करना पड़ रहा है. तो शायद ये पहले से शुरू हुआ होता तो सब चीज़ें ना, बाकी जितने भी मतलब सब कोई किसी ना किसी कम्युनिटी, किसी ना किसी कल्चरल बैकग्राउंड से ही बिलोंग करता है, लेकिन आप में से बहुत लोग शायद रूट भूल चुके होंगे. तो मैं अभी तक भी अपनी रूट में हूँ और कोशिश कर रही हूँ कि साइंस को भी साथ में ले करके चले, क्योंकि साइंस का फाइंडिंग्स भी बहुत ज़रूरी है इसको आगे ले जाने के लिए. थैंक यू.
So, what actually said is in a way correct. I mean, we have to go back to the rural areas and report, maybe, get some science from there. Of course, the people like Mongabe is doing a good job. But what I'm saying is, we still have to do much more reporting from the rural areas and see, look at their problems as well as, solutions that we can find. And we can even tell the scientific community about the problems they face and maybe they can, start working on them. So we will have a better story to tell later, right? I mean, what Indian science has done to improve how a particular community's problems or solutions, giving solutions and all that. So I think that's a good note.
I would
so,
like
yeah,
to add one point
absolutely,
to
yeah,
what you
yeah,
just
sure.
said. So, I mean, connecting with the scientific validation of our traditional practices, again, in the context of what the CSIR had been doing on traditional medicine and other traditional knowledge practices as well, the government of India asked us yet again, to communicate scientifically validated traditional knowledge to the masses. So we have an initiative under the banner Swastik. So this is being done by my sister laboratory called National Institute for Science Communication and Policy Research, NISPER. And under the Swastik, so far we have, disseminated almost like about 40 stories. These are all traditional knowledge or practices of India which has had scientific validation from either from within the country or even from abroad. And these are all very short stories, and these are all largely done on social platforms. So please subscribe to that. It's on Instagram, it's on Facebook, it's on LinkedIn, it's on X. And you can understand that all traditional knowledge is not superstitions, all is not blind faith. They are still valid practices, and even especially when you talk of metallurgy and all that, our pillars, our architecture are still standing strong. These are all our living traditions.
Yeah, certainly you'll get some stories to do from there as well, right? So you can talk to the people and communities. So some unheard voices can be brought in, right?
Yes.
So a last word.
I think I've said quite a lot and it's really wonderful to listen. I would just maybe remind ourselves as journalists that it's very important to quote the laws, even if they are being not used, misused, ignored, bypassed. There is a legal system in this country that is ultimately going to be our only fallback. And I think the stronger stories around science are those which also have voices, of course, of scientists, of people on the ground, but also of what is the legal framework in which they exist and in which they can actually be questioned. Because ultimately the role of journalism is to question. And if we don't strengthen our own hands by learning the legalities, our questions will not have the same weight. Thank you.
I do understand that scientists and journalists have to work together, but based on my experience and limited knowledge, the criticisms travel at the light of speed. Okay, but when it comes to actually validated knowledge, it's somewhere lying in the background. Nobody cares about it. I think journalists can do better, and I request all your help in this.
तो लास्ट
Yes.
तो लास्ट
You have more questions coming from audience.
जर्नलिस्ट का तो मुझे इतना भी आइडिया नहीं है, क्योंकि मेन स्ट्रीम जो टीवी में जो दिख रहा है वही मैं देखती हूँ और मेन स्ट्रीम जो मीडिया वाला आजकल थोड़ा सा उसका अलग भी इमेज जा रहा है. एनीवेज अच्छे लोग भी हैं और इसके बाद जो रिसर्चर्स का जो पेपर है, मैं क्योंकि मैं खुद ऐसे जगह से हूँ जहाँ पे मैंने इटालियन देम के सिलसिले में मैंने जो बोला था वो ये कि आप लोगों की जो पेपर है, जो फाइंडिंग्स है, और आप लोग जो पेपर एक पॉलिसी मेकर्स के टेबल पे जो रखते हो वो बहुत मैटर करता है हम लोग जैसे जो कम्युनिटी वालों के लिए। तो इसीलिए मैंने स्टार्टिंग में ही मैंने एक सेंटेंस बोला था कि आप मतलब इंसानियत के साथ में पहले जाइए, दिमाग एकदम खाली करके जाइए। ये नहीं कि पहले से ही सब कुछ यहाँ पे फ्रेमिंग की, मुझे इस तारीख में ये ख़त्म करना है, ये डेटा लेना है, ऐसा नहीं। वो आप लाइफ टाइम करिए, पर खास करके आप किसी वल्नरेबल मार्जिनलाइज किसी उस जगह पे जाते हो तो काइंडली थोड़ा इंसानियत के साथ जाइए। मैं उतना ही बात।
वैसे भी साइंस का वे तो वैसे नहीं है, मतलब खाली जाके जाते हैं साइंटिस्ट, मतलब उनको तो मतलब क्या है, उनको कोई प्रेजुडिस नहीं होता, तो वैसे अप्रोच करते हैं। थैंक यू। एनी क्वेश्चंस?
I have a question for Preeti, that for long form stories where you have the luxury of time to report and go and talk to the communities, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for long form stories, you have the luxury of time to go and talk to the communities and take their inputs. But sometimes we are covering research papers and it's news, and they may have an impact on indigenous communities. So what do you do in that case? Should a journalist choose not to cover that paper because it may impact a community if when it gets out in the media? For instance, a particular activity indigenous community is doing is wiping out a species. Do you not cover that? And if you cover that, how do you include a voice from the ground when you don't have the luxury of time to report from the ground?
So there is, of course, the news angle in which there's been a discovery and you want to write about it, and yes, it will impact people on the ground. But if it goes out as a news report, then people will pick it up and later on do the deep dive story, which is a long form in which there are many more voices in it, right? Which will also might be critical voices, for it voices, impacted voices, and so on. To come to the second question that you're asking is. If there is something being done by rural communities which is antithetical which is wrong for conservation and ecology and so on, of course it must be reported. So I don't mean to say that everything in rural India is wonderful and fantastic. There is a barbaric, there is the brutal, there is also, as actually said, people are now, and I have seen this in the last 3-4 months, and I have been reporting on Ken Beta, people are just saying, give us our money and let us go. Doesn't matter whether there's no hydrological, justification for this thing. We just want to get out of here because they live so much on the edge of poverty that 15 lakh rupees, which they'll never get, but sounds like a fantastic amount. And so I think definitely we should be reporting even, as journalists, we should not be confining ourselves only to one angle or one aspect. As Vishujanni also said, we should be looking at everything, reporting it equally and fairly. Our job is to amplify, our job is to inform, right?
So taking from the information and knowledge we got from Achali and from my own experience, we see a lot of traditional knowledge present with communities which can be used for climate change plannings and policy building and all of that. So when we talk about digital library, we are documenting stuff which is fantastic. Is there scope to document this kind of knowledge as well, which can be useful for making policies considering the community angle? And we spoke about how it is to fight the misappropriation of Indian knowledge. But how much are we able to utilize this knowledge for our own country's policy making understanding? Is there any collaboration with the government bodies? Which are the decision makers when they are, let's say, building a dam or planning for building houses in seismic zones which have been following very traditional architecture and they have not the knowledge, but they are now bringing in concrete. So are we able to use it ourselves apart from misappropriation in the larger global context?
Well, I'll restrict my response to limited to scientists and research activities, because when you go to a very policy level, there are multiple players involved, and I would not be able to answer on behalf of everyone, especially me coming from a government body. So in terms of documenting oral traditional knowledge into the TKDL database, yes, we are interested, provided people who are collecting the knowledge have followed ethical practices, and that's the guidance document that we are bringing in, so that people's lives are not compromised. That we are very, very particular about it, because as she mentioned, these are all directly related to their livelihoods. So we want to ensure that their livelihoods are not compromised. Having said that, we are also interacting with all other government bodies to collect all that knowledge ethically and bring it to the TKDL database. Wherever the community or the knowledge holders emphasize that this should not be made public, we are going to have, because it's a digital library, everything can be controlled by ICT frameworks. We can build firewalls, we can tag anything as secret confidential knowledge. That knowledge will be preserved but not be put into public domain until and unless a community agrees to put it into public domain. The TKDL database being on a digital framework, we also have the ability to monitor usage. Right now, it is only restricted to patent officers. Okay, no other external users do not have access to it, but we have got the Government of India approval. We are in the process of opening it up to the users, but it would be through a paid subscription basis. So we would be able to monitor. There'd be a lot of terms and conditions, including restrictions in terms of download, print, and all that. This is to ensure that the knowledge is not misused. Okay, so these are the kind of frameworks that we are putting in. But on the other side, when you are saying, there's a lot of developmental activities going on and people are just, converting green pastures into concrete jungles, I should also emphasize that, the public also is driven by greed. Okay, it's not the government alone to blame. Okay, the public is deprived of those luxuries, so they are in greed to gain commercial benefits, and that's the reason this imbalance is happening. Unless the public and the government work together, I don't see a effective solution coming in place, especially in the context of all that we have talked about, including climate change.
So my question is related to over reporting, really, in including ethnic community voices, because in recent times Arn Harms, he has written a lot about how over reporting and the presence of film crews who are covering climate change in the Indian Sundarbans is leading to a long-term impact on the communities who are there. There is a creation of false memories, and in fact, the entire process of including ethnic community voices in science journalism is turning into an extractivist practice without looking at the long-term impact of it on the communities. So how do you think we can address that?
I completely agree with you, I have to say. And I'm ashamed to belong to the tribe of journalists who also is kind of extractive, because journalism by its very nature is extractive in that sense. And we have, in fact, we also have an arm called PARI Education, in which we, work with universities and schools. And some of the university scholars come back and say, we are the 5th year of students going to the same craft village, and they are tired of speaking to us. I cannot blame them, I would be tired as well. So I think it's also become like a box to tick to go into rural India to get an ethnic voice. And you're very right about, false memories, and it's crowding. It's a lot of pressure for people over there. It's a lot of their time is taken, which they would otherwise spend, feeding themselves and their family. So I think this is something that I don't have an answer to, but yes, I think it should be seriously considered and it should be tabled more often. But thank you for mentioning it.
I hope you all enjoyed it. And I think it's a very, last year we had a conference here where we talked about this, including these kind of the community voices in the science story. So one person actually pointed out something, for the sake of putting community voice to being politically correct, which probably is not the right way to do that. If something is going to really affect them, and if you think that that's an important aspect of the story, probably that is when we really need to add that or rather put that in. So I think I subscribe to that view.
At the same time, like, of course, we really need to know, especially in this age of climate change and all that, we really need to know how rural communities are faring, or rather they are being affected by various things which we do, especially the developmental activities. And then we need to report back and then probably to the scientific community so that they can really work on and understand the problem. I'll give you an example. I think, like in Kerala, I come from Kerala. So most of the houses, affluent or other upper middle class or rich people, all of them now have air conditioners all across. I mean, it's in the villages and towns. So probably, there's a one way of could have been, they could have actually, if the government or the community, scientific community, they works with the government, and actually they could have come out with some codes for kind of materials that can use there. So you can actually bring down the, the kind of the heat that trapped inside. But then nothing happens, right? I mean, maybe I don't know, it's a national level thing or state level thing, but then these kind of things probably could have, in a way, helped you mitigate some of the problems of climate change or warming, all that. I mean, but then we are not doing that kind of thing. So probably, we can report back or rather report on that so that, somebody will look at it and all that thing. So we have a role to play there as well. So yeah, that's it. I thought it was a wonderful session. Yeah, thank you so much.